Just two conscious guys talking, where conscious male leaders come together and have a discussion that is deep, that is nourishing, that allows us to see the illumination of consciousness that's unfolding progressively for men that are waking up in the world, and where you can get insights on your own awakening as a man, and also for amazing women that want to learn more about men's challenges and struggles that have created some of the dysfunction we've seen within men in its society, often called, quote unquote, the patriarchy and other terms. What created it? What is the genesis of it all? What can we do about it today to empower men to be all that they're meant to be and to support the awakening of consciousness for men and women and all? Chuck, it's just so awesome reconnecting with you, having this conversation just even before we got started formally here today. And I really was inspired by the person you are, just who you are. When we met years ago, just feeling that sense of love and compassion and care that you bring into, feels like most everything you do. And I'm glad we're reconnecting, and we're having some cool conversations about guidance and listening to guidance and all kinds of things before we even came on. So it's just great to be reconnecting with you.
Yeah, and likewise, Daniel. I mean, I recall us having some really cool conversations, and it's great when you go to the retreats, and we would meet up at retreats, a few times, and when you unplug from life and you just take that kind of break. The kind of conversations that and so much learning that can come from having those kind of conversations with others. So that's something I recall quite fondly of our conversations, and just being able to talk without really expectation. I mean, neither of us is trying to sell each other anything. Like, we're just two guys talking, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just like we are today, right? Just talking. So so it's been awesome talking to so many different conscious male leaders and really talking about these male stereotypes. Pretty consistently, I've been talking about, I was a 70s, 80s kid, basically. So I think that makes a difference, because some of the guys that have come on are older or younger sometimes, and some of them are like my exact age even. So it's been a range, but it seems to have some effect on the stereotypes that we've dealt with, and some of them kind of have been pretty pervasive, or persistent, I guess is maybe more the word. And so, for me, just briefly, the awkwardness of being, for me, it was like being empathic, introverted, and all that sort of stuff. And so this idea of, oh, what's what I can do as a guy and all that, mostly just wasn't natural to me, even though I probably took that on a lot at times. Like, okay, let's get into it now. But it wasn't always kind of my thing. Mine was more be observant, love people, just be present. And I would play around and stuff, but not so I'm a man, that kind of, even a boy, I'm a boy, come on, let's go, I wasn't really like that. But yet all the images on TV and movies are hey, John Wayne is still pretty strong back then. That kind of stuff. Clint Eastwood, go ahead, make my day. A lot of different stuff. You're supposed to be, a badass, beat people up, kill them, shoot them, slice them up. Then we went into Rocky and Rambo's and all kinds of stuff, for Terminators, and it's kind of still going on now, but for sure. But there was a lot of these stereotypes. So I wanted to ask you, because I've been asking everybody, is what kind of I talked about those influences. I had my dad, all that, so it's a whole other story. But what influences did you have around this is what it means to be a man, this is how you should be as a boy, directly and indirectly, that maybe kind of hit you as you were growing up in your formative years especially? And how did you as you were growing up and going into adulthood and beyond, how have you kind of moved through those? So it's kind of a big question, but
Mhm.
wherever you want to get started.
Well, we'll unpack that. I mean, that's definitely a journey in itself. Well,
Yeah.
like you, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, watched all those same Western movies and, the Rambo movies and all of that. And of course, Star Wars, because
Yeah.
that's, but it was always, there was always that. But I was, and I grew up in a farm community, and so we were kind of Western, like we were, it was that, and men were tough and they were strong and they could lift things and they could build things, um, and at a very early age, I realized that was not my skill set. My skill set was observing, seeing how things were done, and then coming up with ideas on how to do them better. And so it was interesting. It was my very first experience with resistance, where I would have these ideas, but those ideas were very quickly rejected as being stupid or dumb or whatever, because that's not how we do things, right? And all of that. And so what was the stereotype? Well, this is how we do things. This is how we've always done things. This is how we always will be doing things. And it was a very common attitude where I grew up. And, I was blessed. I had some very strong male role models in my life. My father was there. My grandfather was there. Several uncles. We all worked together on the farm. And what I observed from them is very, very, very hard work. And my dad always said to me, he said, look, if you want to get ahead in life, you got to work hard. My grandfather, both grandfathers said that to me constantly. So, when I first started my first business, okay, so I didn't become a farmer. I was in sales and marketing. And when I started that first business, what did I do? I saw them working from dawn till dusk on the farm. And what did I do? I did the same thing in my business. Okay, I wasn't farming, but I was certainly working hard. I could still do a 14-hour day without breaking a sweat. I'll be tired, but I could do it because I'm programmed for working hard. Now, does that mean I was working effective? Probably not. So it's not about the number of hours, but certainly, that whole thing, on the farm, it was all about hard work. And I hated I learned very early on, I hated physical labor. And it just wasn't my thing. Can I build a house? No. Can I, I can screw in a light bulb. I can use basic tools, but I'm not going to build a barn or a shed or a birdhouse even. But I can observe other people doing it, and I can see where the efficiencies are. I can see how you can do it better. And so it took me a long time to really understand that was one of my gifts, because of all the criticism I received when I was young, and bullying and all sorts of things, that it took me a long time to figure out that was a gift, because of course, sharing the ideas, it would weird people out, and they were like, well, that's not how we do it. And so there was a lot of that, and then also layered on top of that, I was someone who could feel other people's energy, but I didn't know that I could. I didn't know what it was. I would always have this anxious feeling. I could feel anger. I could feel anxious. And it took me I always thought it was me, but it turns out that I can feel other people when they're angry, and I can feel other people when they're anxious. And gosh, I was probably in my mid-30s before I really figured out and had the guidance to really understand what was happening. For the longest time, I thought there was something wrong with me, right? I thought that I was angry. I thought that I was anxious. I thought that, my ideas were dumb. And, it really did take a long time to figure all that out, just because of, all of this input, this intake, and some of the beliefs and the stereotypes of the people in our community and the people in my family, my father, my grandfather, my uncles, all of that. And it affects so many parts of how I am in terms of how I approach things but in those early days, it took me a long time to really realize that the things I thought were bad or wrong or broken were actually my greatest gifts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I could relate to that too. I mean, like I think at some point I must have perceived, like, I think a lot of times I was sort of doing a screw you thing. Like I just would be quiet and just do my own thing and be probably thinking in my own head. I know, especially in high school, I did. I was like, you're all stupid. I'm not stupid. You're stupid. Like, you guys don't make any sense. All right. So I'm good. You're not. But I was the one who was depressed. So I was the one having all the struggles. But not that other people weren't, but that's what was showing up for me. I was struggling though. And but yeah, I mean, like, I know that, like, as an adult especially, I have the, again, as I think about it, all comes back to, but like I know, like, a lot of times people would be like, oh, you're just so gentle and soft and a beautiful man and all this stuff. And then I would get mad because I'd be like, I mean, and then, oh, here's a fun one too. Like, and even like this has happened many times in the past. It hasn't happened recently at all, but it has happened in the past where I'd be carrying something, like I'd be moving something, and there'd be women around watching me carry something. I'd be like, "Oh dear, are you okay? Do you need help with that?" And like, I'm pretty tall, but I'm thinner looking, so like people are like, "Oh, you're not very strong, so like you might need help," and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, why does everybody perceive me as so soft and weak and everything? I thought it was a total deficiency, and I totally hated it. And so like it did help me to maybe own the gift that I do naturally have, that I have strength that people would never imagine I have, physically, especially like, okay, you think I'm weak. All right. Like, I'm going in a bad mood in the gym. I probably shared this more once on his interviews. I'd be like one time I remember this big guy was on a machine. I'm like, are you done with that machine? I was so mad that day, just in general with my life or whatever. And then he's like, sure, dude. All right. Got on there. I just started ripping that machine up, and it literally broke while I was using it. Because I didn't change the weight. Whatever he had on, I was like, I don't care. I literally, the machine literally broke. And because I have the ability to harness something really powerful, powerful energy I can tap into, but it's like people can't see that because that's not the first thing they perceive in me. They don't perceive that strength at first. And many times in my life, I wasn't radiating it. I was radiating the strength. So they keep saying, well, you look kind of weak to us. So I started to realize that. But so that's what resonated when you said, like, but my softness is a strength because people feel safe with me, right? They feel like, wow, you're like really spiritually connected, and that feels amazing, that vibration. But I made it so wrong. No, watch me, look how strong I am. I wanted to kind of prove that, because that's what you're supposed to be as a man as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to, kind of prove it to a certain degree to myself, of course, more than anything. And I wanted to demonstrate that. So I would, and now I'm at peace with all that stuff. As far as I know, I haven't had it hasn't showed up as an issue lately, but it's been a journey, right? Like just realizing like the things that come most natural to us that we get judged for. Because I would come up with ideas. I would question my professors and stuff in grad school. They'd be like, "Oh, you're pitting us against each other because you're all asking us the same questions." I'm like, I'm just trying to get all your perspectives. I'm trying to learn as best as I possibly can. well, we think you're doing what we call splitting, and so you're deficient. And now you need extra remediation and help for your psychological deficits. I'm like they come up with all kinds of stories. I think they needed a lot more therapy personally, but anyway, so you got me on a big riff on that, but like I think this is huge for a lot of people and men, but like yeah, like our great gifts, we're often persecuted for gifts or told they're wrong. And no, that you're not supposed to be like that, right? You're not, no, this is no good. And I remember my dad even told me that. He says, innovators always get in trouble. They always get in trouble. They always get told, hey, no, you're rocking the boat here. Don't do that. So people like me and you, not that we're exactly the same, but we share this, like, yeah, we're not always embraced by everybody. Sometimes people are like, no, get out of here. We don't want that change, right? So totally.
Exactly. Well, people get, it's comfortable when things stay the same, when
Yeah.
things are predictable, when things are a certain way. And it's interesting. I mean, I live in a, big-ish city now. You don't see it as much, but in the small farming community, saw it all the time. I mean, people were so programmed that things had to be a certain way. And there's an old saying that one of my mentors used to say, that a fish doesn't know what water is until you remove them from the ocean. And it's like, oh wait, what's that? Like, you're in the water all the time, you're surrounded by it. When one of the best things that ever happened to me was leaving that and moving to Vancouver, where now I'm in a big city. You don't know what everyone's thinking because you're not talking. We used to live in a farming community where we knew everybody and you always knew what was what. And being removed from that gave me a whole new perspective. And one of the things that you were saying there kind of reminded me of, one of those stereotypes is that, men are tough and all of that kind of stuff. And I remember, growing up, guys wanting to prove how tough they are, and they want to fight you, right? And
Yeah.
I was someone, until I was convinced otherwise, that would refuse to fight. I would refuse to do it. And not that I was afraid, but just didn't seem logical to me. Like, I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to be hurt, but also I didn't want to be someone who hurt others. I just didn't want to be like that. And so, defending yourself or whatever. But that's the, and so refusing to do that was perceived as weakness. And so then what happens? Even more people want to challenge you because they want to be the one that finally gets you to crack.
Right. Exactly.
And it's like, no, not going to do it. And, and so, I mean, because that was huge, right? And I just remember that, just constantly being challenged with that. One thing that helped me get away from that is moving away from that community and moving to a new city. You get kind of like a fresh start, but it was interesting because, talking about how these sort of stereotypes or this so-called masculinity, is communicated or learned. That was definitely part of it. Fast forward to today, those guys are completely different today.
Yeah.
The ones I know of anyways. But back then it was all about proving how tough you were, right? Proving how strong you were. And I just didn't want any part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I had definitely one of the themes, like probably most of the guys I've talked to said they were bullied as kids, which I find to be, like it's a theory I went in with anyway. Like, and then I started seeing like, yeah, like even without me asking, sometimes people say, yeah, I was bullied and things like that. And I was too. Like, I didn't even look at it that way, but like, and I did do some bullying myself. Probably the kids I bullied probably were like, yeah, you kind of messed with me, but it's no big deal. But like I saw it as like bullying. I probably didn't even see it as bad as like whatever I did, but just punching kids in the arm and stuff that were weaker and stuff like that, usual kind of stuff that's guys can do sometimes. But like, yeah, like having somebody, I've gone over it so many times, but like there's somebody like, yeah, it'd be like after me all the time. And then, you know, I remember like one time, like his friend would come up to my locker. All right, he's ready to fight you, and he says, "Let's go." And see, and I was just, and it's funny. You would think like I would have some kind of, you know, response. Most people would think I'd have a response, like an emotional response to this, right? Oh, it actually, for me, sometimes crisis. For me, I'm one of those people that sometimes relaxes with crisis. I'm like, oh, you know, no, I'm not gonna fight him. And you know, that's just ridiculous. It's the same exact way as you with that. I was just like, that's just ridiculous. I won't be fighting him, you know, so don't worry about it. Like, I'm not showing up for it. So, you know, and but the thing is I think like I was clear enough about it at the time that although I was never challenged to that fight again, that I still got harassed though. Like I remember one of his other friends like slapped me on the face, and I didn't do a thing because like we're pretty hard, like smack, just out of nowhere, like out of the blue for no reason. And I was just like, I was just shocked. I was just like, what was that all about? Like, what? I don't even know what to do. Like, and so it's always shocked me. The most recent thing I can remember like that, where I realized like you know, my normal way of being is like, so like, no, I'm not doing that, was in martial arts. I was learning martial arts again. You know, I've had different stints with it. And you know, it's my friend, my buddy, actually, he one day is like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna like kind of challenge him. So he wasn't like, you know, he's studied like whatever X amount of martial arts. He's like really advanced and all of that. So all of a sudden he's like, come on, come after me as hard as you can. And like he started yelling at me and all this stuff, just try to see how I'll respond. And I was like, all I could think was like, I don't want to hurt my friend. That's all I could think in that moment. Like I feel like this is all the game. I don't want to play the game. I don't want to, you know, come at you hard, because I think both me and you, people like ourselves at least, you know we could hurt somebody, and yeah, we could be hurt bad too, potentially, for sure. But it's like, we're like, it's just senseless, you know, like it doesn't compute to us. And so I think that's fascinating, because I hadn't really, you know, recently anyway, talked to somebody who'd had that same kind of response to the idea of fighting. I was always like, this is stupid. I've never fought anybody. Like the one time a guy took a swing at me or whatever, and I just ducked out of the way. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. Because I have an intensity. I know I'm supposed to be talking to you, asking you more questions. It's so funny. But anyway, I have an intensity. And when I do, there is a switch that flips inside me. And when it switches, it's just the opposite. It's like, you're going down, and like anything in my path is going down. And that's the part like I've had to learn to get in a good relationship with, so that I don't go unconscious with it, and maybe potentially, you know, unleash it someday. Like I never have done it, used it for like some horrible purpose, but like I have it, you know, I know I have it in me to do those things potentially when that switch flips, right? Like somebody like threatens my house, like it's happened before. I go after those people, like they're in trouble. Like if I catch them, they're in trouble. I guarantee.
Yeah.
Like they're in trouble. So, but anyway, I'll
Well,
let you talk and rip off
well,
that.
I love what you just said, because I recognize that I have that switch also.
Yeah.
And I've had moments. It's one of the things that actually, it happened to me back in you know, very early high school, where that switch flipped for the very first time. And you know, that because I moved to Vancouver, the pattern of bullying stopped, because this is where my first lesson in beingness, right? Because the bullying wasn't really because of you know, I mean, there's bullies out there for sure, but I was in a way creating these situations with the way I was handling things, the way I was communicating. And so I was attracting these idiots to me. And then one day I decide this is not happening the way it happened in that other community. And that guy paid the price for it. And I did too, because being someone who didn't want to hurt someone, that took it took a big toll on me. It affected me very deeply, where I'm like, what have I done? Which is amazing, because as a hockey player as well, it's somehow okay when you're playing hockey. Like if someone hits you or hits your teammate, you can go after them. It's almost like it's part of the game, like it's the rule. But outside of hockey, it's like, no, man, like, we don't do this. And that desire to not want to hurt people, I think, has radiated into all of my work. There are times as a marketing consultant or, a business investor where you are sometimes invited to do things that are low integrity, and or just really, not that they, doesn't make the world a better place, but is potentially harmful, right? And I refuse to get involved in those kinds of business activities, or selling certain products. Like the world doesn't need another penis extension pill, right? Like we've got enough of those, and my skills are probably best used to market other sorts of products and not those sorts of products. And so, like, I just want to use my skills for good and not for anything that might harmful or take. I'm not all about I want my bank account so big that I'm willing to sell anything to get that money. Because I see this, and like, take Shark Tank, for example. I heard Kevin O'Leary say this. It's like, hey, do what you need to do for money, and then you can take that money and you can do whatever philanthropy you want. You can be idealistic all you want with the other thing, but make the money and then use that to fund your good thing. And I really pondered that for a long time. I'm like, really, like, am I being too idealistic in my business? But I have to disagree. Like, for me, I'm not going to just do anything to make, a boatload of money. Yes. Do I want to help people? Yes. But everything I do has to help and not hurt. And so sometimes that translates into slower growth, or, idea like, would it, I don't desire to drive a Lamborghini or anything, but, it's having the financial abundance to be able to go where I want to go and do what I want to do and all that kind of stuff. That's all well and good, but I will not do it by hurting people. And so this, getting back to what we're talking about, this whole idea of, I don't want to fight because I don't want to hurt people. That was a core belief that when I look back, I had very, very, very early on, and that still runs in me today. Okay, so it's not a fight, it's not a conflict, and I thankfully do not have conflict in my life the way I used to have conflict in my life. I worked very hard to get rid of that, but it's still that benchmark where I get to measure, and when a new opportunity comes in, does this fit my rules? Like, does this help or does this hurt? Where does that align in here? And that's how I choose the things that I spend my time on and use my skills for.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, like, it integrates into my work too, because I'm so universal love, but I'm also like, I harness the infinite power too. I talk about, hey, we can manifest whatever our soul truly desires, not if you can manifest your ego stuff, you may pay for it too. Like, so, you have to be careful what you ask for. You might get it. Like, yeah, I could use infinite power to convince, maybe, universe might not, support it long term, but to convince people of anything. Like, just because I'm able to harness power like that, but for what purpose? It's like, okay, now I can go brag to everybody I've just made, 20 figures or whatever. It doesn't, the numbers are irrelevant in a way in this conversation when it has to do, but I could say I made even more, and it was because I'm even greater, just because what the revenue says, right? Doesn't matter that maybe half or 80-90% of the people felt like I ripped them off. Like, I just say, but no, I'm successful, and I gave it all to philanthropy too. Like, a lot of money to philanthropy. If I hit and give to philanthropy too, does it mean they're doing the right thing? I don't know about that, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm just making it to the extreme to make a point, right? It's we can unite with our power, our masculine power, if we want to call it that, whatever you want to call it, and also that universal love, that deeper love we have at the same time. And my journey has been to realize there's not a conflict, but it's been hard to see that because they seem like very different vibrations of energy to me. And so it's taken a while for me to work it out, Chuck, so I can relate. Yeah, it is a challenge, because it's like, why don't you just man up and get that result? And it's like, well, there's some standards we have here too, though, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you, I mean, I realize that I have this power and I realize that I have this skill. And if I really had to, and in my early days, when you're kind of learning, like, how far should I go, or how should I use this? I mean, there are the things that I've sold and the things that I've said that I wish that I hadn't. Part of that was the journey in learning where my lines were, right?
Mhm.
So it's almost in a way in that early part of my journey that I had to cross those lines to determine, no, I don't want to go there. Like that's not okay. That's not who I am. And now with, I've got, 3 boys that I'm raising, and, mentoring is like, trying to then teach them those values as well. And of course, some of the things that I teach them, they will do, and many of the other things they will reject, and others they will just have to learn on their own as well. But where are those lines for you, right? And sometimes you make those mistakes where it's like, yeah, I didn't like that, and work that out in therapy, and but find out where the lines are. And then that's ultimately where the value systems are. Now, everyone gets to decide that for themselves, like, where are those lines? For some people, the bar seems to be, and this is my judgment, right? And I'm okay with that. The bar seems to be extremely low. And, it's manipulating, using that power. I mean, they're very powerful people, but you can use that power for good, or you can use that power for evil. You can use it for personal gain. Right. Or here's a concept. How about if we all gain at the same time, right? Like, why do you have to give up something in order for me to gain something? Right. Like, couldn't we both gain something? Right. And so, but it took years to really like process what that meant for me. And, what does that mean in terms of where are my lines drawn? What are some of the activities I will get involved with? What are some of the things I will not get involved with? What are some of the things I've done in the past that I'll never do again? And really, like, what do I stand for? Like, and then how do I use this going forward to make a difference? And also, teach it to my kids, certainly, but also share it with others. And, how does this help? Right. And so.
Right, exactly. I mean, yeah, in sales, I've definitely been somebody who would be considered the aggressive salesman big time, in the past. So be like, there are no excuses. There's only signing up. And right now, today, no bars. Like, you're only telling your stories. I got a better story. And like, that's how I looked at it. I'm like, my story will trump your story. And I'm going to do, but the intent was always good. It was like, I will bring you into the promise. I will bring you in. But the problem with that ended up being is that they weren't choosing for themselves. It's like I had chosen for them, and they just went along with it. Oh, okay. And then they never, like, didn't come into it with their own power, like into working with me, like, so in the past. So I had to learn that. But this is why I tell some people to feel free to maybe be a little more assertive or aggressive, or whatever words we want to use, because sometimes you don't know where the lines are until you do cross it a little bit. And, as long as you're coming with good intentions, that's, at least let that be your standard. And then maybe you gotta learn, because if you go too like, well, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. I'm just a good guy. I'll let you decide. And get too passive, that could be a problem too. So now maybe you blew an opportunity to help somebody if you had to encourage them a little bit more, in a nice way. So yeah, that sales thing, persuasiveness, the way we use our power in so many different ways, like yeah, it's that dance of the feminine, the masculine, if you want to call it that, or whatever. There's this sort of dance going on and trying to find that balance. So I guess just because, I mean, I could talk for hours about all this with you, Chuck, but I know we only have so much time left. So I was wondering, how do you, in your, whether we're talking business or in your life, what is that dance for you like now? Yeah, describe that a little bit for us. Talk to us a little bit about your dance with like using that power, what we call it, masculine, or just or that I could make this happen energy, and versus like, hey, wait a minute, like there's these standards and like like or whatever, or and more of the feminine energy and everything, and more nurturing, more just like, well, whatever you want, my dear, like kind of thing. And like, so what's your journey like today with that after obviously learning a lot and moving through a lot of different things in your life?
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the biggest shifts was really learning to check into how I feel. And when I was growing up, we didn't talk about feelings. So I was surrounded by really cool men. Like I had my dad and I had two grandfathers and several uncles and all my cousins. And, we worked on the farm together, but we didn't talk about feelings, right? We talked about the hockey game. We talked about the football game. We talked about, the stereotypical things. It took me a long time to really check into how something feels. And fast forward to today, I've really learned to use my own emotions as a compass,
Mm-hmm.
and it points me north, south, east, west. And based upon how I'm feeling, gives me so much information. The first bit of information is, am I on the right path? Am I aligned here? Or am I working against myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I working against, the intention? Am I, what I asked for? Even the inspiration I've received, and am I on that track or am I off that track? The other thing is, based on what I'm feeling, is this, is this helpful or is it hurtful? Like I want to, like if something, so like let's say I come up with an idea and I try to implement it, but for some reason I feel anxious, and I have a lot of anxiety around it, or just a tremendous amount of discomfort. Now, some people might call that fear and go, oh yeah, feel the fear and do it anyways. But you know what? Fear is it's a great check-in, and for me, it's part of my compass. It's like, okay, what is this feeling and what's it all about? What is it trying to tell me? Is
Right.
it trying to keep me safe, or am I inadvertently going against one of my values and not realizing like what's going on here? And so it's not a stop and turn around and go the other way. It's a pause for a moment, check in, what's really happening here, and just ask some questions like, what's really, like, I find that to be a very empowering question, like what's really happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And then just get quiet and listen, right? What am I hearing other people say in their conversations? Not necessarily to me, but sometimes I've received my answers by standing in an elevator. Two people were talking, and I had just asked myself this question: what's really going on here? And then those two would be saying something, and I'm like, oh my God, that's it. Like, just paying attention to what's going on around me. So I'd ask the question, what's really going on here? And then wait for answer. And then when I'm, trust the answer. It's something that I still do because the ego part of me says, oh, what, like, because once you realize that you're being guided and there are all these answers, then the ego says, oh, let's manipulate the heck out of this. And so I can just manifest at will, right? Not exactly how it works. And I'm sure, the universe is just having a laugh about that whenever we, and that's a check-in as well. Like, why is this so painful? Why is what I'm trying to do not working? And then ask, like, am I on the right path? So is this something I need to change about this, or do I need to be doing something else? Just asking really good quality questions, but then really paying attention to the answer.
Yeah, exactly. Those high quality questions is a real master key. Like, I remember having a conversation with myself earlier today. I was like, you know, had a new client come on board yesterday, and yeah, it's just about time. Oh my God, it seems like 5 days ago, but it was just yesterday. Anyway, so I was like, okay, and then my sometimes, like, my calculating brain wants to come on board in my business, and it's like, okay, all right, let's see, so what does that mean? What does it mean? And tries to assign meaning to things, like, so this means that, and then that money I can use for this, and then that, and then we need this much more for that, and then it's jumping all over the place, and it's like, freaking hell, just celebrate it, keep calling more, you're going nuts, analyzing this stuff, doing all these numbers and stuff. What the hell is that all about? So I realized one of the things I realized, and probably I've heard other people say this, but it's not unique to me, to this idea, but definitely we all know, like, we've heard, like, okay, your mind's thinking off of certain questions, basically, right? Like, am I safe? Like, so, like, it was kind of like, forget what the question was, but I'm like, well, what question is my consciousness thinking that's driving this behavior right now? So it's something like, well, we're gonna have enough for what we want, for what we want here. Like, and it's more of the minimal things that I want, not all the bigger expanded things. So it's like, crap, that's a crappy question. Rather the question, how is it that I'm already experiencing more than enough for everything I want and more? Like, it was more like that sort of a question it led me into. And then just asking that question, not even doing anything with it, and being in that energy totally shifted it instantly. It's like, oh, okay, now we just relax. Like just those questions. So when you said the questions, I was like, yeah, the questions, the way we frame our consciousness is based on questions that our mind is wondering about. And then I got to be observant to those questions. And then if it's a crappy question, in my opinion, change the question, make it a much higher quality question that puts you in the vibration you want to be in, and brings to you more of what you want, from that energy. So anyway, that was awesome, Chuck. Yeah, and we'll know if we need to be more badass, so to speak, on something or not. We know where that's needed, and our feelings will tell us that too, right? I mean, we'll get the nudge, like, hey, get a little more gritty with that, or whatever. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about paying attention and, again, asking good quality questions. And if intensity is what's needed, I believe that's the information or the download or the inspiration that you'll receive is, or you'll start being surrounded by messages of intensity. And that means, okay, that's what I need to bring to the table. Or it might be something else, like, what is needed here? Or is this even on, is this within my body's or my spirit's higher purpose? And which is another great question. I can't remember who taught me that question. It's a great question, right? Because sometimes the answer is no.
Right.
And it's been something you've been working on for a long time. So,
right.
But oftentimes the answer is yes, even with something that apparently doesn't seem to be working, but it's not that it's broken. There might be just one little piece, just one little thing that needs to shift. And you just haven't discovered that little piece of information yet, but, learn that. And sometimes it's intensity and sometimes it's something else. But what is that missing piece? Listen for it. And then when you find it, act on it with intention and some urgency. And I think that's where some really cool results can show.
Yeah, there's a real, and then there too, like, that's true. And then sometimes it's like we get anxious and we're trying to shoot out of the box too quick, and we're meant to be patient and wait. And so it's a whole dance, and it's going to be so fun and glorious as long as we can trust, like you said, your emotions, your your intuition, your guidance system from your emotions, right? So yeah, that's definitely one of those master keys for 100%. So Chuck, it's just awesome having this conversation with you today, and I'm knowing a lot of people will benefit from what was circulated here today. So just thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you, Daniel, and it's just wonderful to reconnect. Definitely miss our conversations.
Thank you for listening in to Just Two Conscious Guys Talking, where our mission is to impact millions of men ultimately to deepen their awakening by examining their consciousness of what's been unfolding for them with male stereotypes and programming that has allowed them to have opportunities to evolve during these times. It's an exciting time to bring more love to men and women around the world, and we are grateful for you tuning in today. Feel free to share this episode and keep tuning in, and also look in the show notes for a link to get notifications of future episodes. Until the next time, everyone, goodbye for now.